Welcome to Foundation and Podcast, the officially unofficial podcast for Foundation on Apple TV Plus. This week we're covering Season 1, Episode 4, The Barbarians at the Gate. Respect and enjoy the podcast. All right, Aaron, what do you think of Episode 4?
You know, I really liked this episode. I thought that they are really making the Terminus stuff interesting. I thought I'm continuing to be impressed at how well they're telling the story of like this empire falling from without, from within. You know, it's like it's a house divided against itself, literally. It seems like at a lot of points in this episode, and like I said, they continue to flesh out the Terminus stuff. I think having the Anacreons a little bit more fleshed out, weaving in some of that stuff from the pilot episode, the gifts and the bows, and I don't know, it feels like they're really building something here. What did you think?
Yeah, I largely agree. I will say I continue to be far more interested in the Imperial stuff than in the Terminus stuff so far. I do agree though that they're building something out there that could be interesting. Once we get kind of moving on that, maybe I'll be more excited about it. But what is there with the Empire is fascinating to me yet again this episode. I truly appreciate the irony of everything that they're doing there with the Empire, you know, trying to prevent a crisis of faith within its population, its subjects, and yet having one within itself at the very moment that they're trying to do that. There's kind of a delicious irony there. The themes of faith and purpose and legacy that they're exploring here are very interesting as well, as seen through this clone lineage. It's all very good. And I'm thoroughly enjoying that stuff.
Yeah, in fact, like I said, I don't have very many criticisms or critiques at this point. Like, it just feels like they're telling a great story. The only thing I'm a little bit surprised is, you know, Hardin. We knew that she was special because she is resistant to the void field, or the null field, they call it. Mm-hmm. But like, it seems like she's got a lot more things that are special about her. Like this kind of like precognition or intuition that they're calling it. I'm really kind of surprised that they're weaving in something like that, something non-material, or apparently non-material. I guess I'd call it supernatural. I don't think even within the show's framework that they understand it, or at least they haven't advanced the understanding of it yet. So I'm a little surprised about that, but I'm not put off by it. Like, I thought that was one of the great things about you know, Game of Thrones, is the way they melded kind of like real world kind of crunchy politic with, you know, just a touch of magic and
in this case, like statistics. The stuff they're doing with coin flip is interesting when paired also with the statisticians who are called in.
You
know, there's a lot of intricate storytelling, and they expect you to just kind of pick this stuff up and run with it because they're not going to hold your hand too much. It's one of the things I like about this show. It's also one of the things I could understand would be challenging for a lot of viewers, myself included at times. The first time through this, I had a lot of like, what the fuck kind of questions. Second time through, I was picking up a lot more. So
this show is one of those that does reward multiple viewings. Now, sometimes people take that as a criticism, like, well, shit, if it's, you know, you should be able to get everything on the first go. Like, I mean, like I said, I'm never at the end of these episodes thinking like, oh my God, I don't know what the hell's happening at all.
No.
But like, it's usually I start teasing out those things, like you said, like the dressing down of the statisticians with the statistical unlikelihood of Hardin's little coin trick at the end. Like, I thought that stuff was really good. And also, like, while we're on the subject of Empire screaming and yelling at people, I think Lee Pace and I can't remember the older character actor that's doing the Brother Dusk work. I think those guys in particular are doing a very good job at having a distinct characterization. And like, it really does feel like Brother Dusk is the old Brother Day. And just the way that they talk to the new Brother Day or the new Brother Dawn, and it seems like massive inferiority complex that the current Brother Day feels towards the current Brother Dusk. Like, I think that stuff is surprising. Like, I remember in a preseason coverage, like, I don't know, it's Brother Dusk, Brother Day, Brother Dawn. Maybe it's a smart way to keep some kind of continuity of villains throughout the sprawl. But it just keeps paying off. I'm very curious about where they're going to suicidal arc. Maybe fall in love with the Palace Gardener kind of arc. I don't know about that, but shit, why not? I was listening to the official podcast. They say that that's going to go to surprising directions. So we've got that to look forward to.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. The other thing that they're doing that is not, handholdy is another one of those sort of generational things. Like you said, they're lending distinct personalities to the characters that they're embodying, but also they are expecting you to keep pace with that change pretty profoundly. Like, they are laying a lot of weight of this episode on the idea that you can understand that this is Brother Dusk is the exact same Brother Day that we saw in the first 2 episodes.
Yes.
Set all of this stuff in motion. And there are moments where they like brush up against telling you that, but a lot of it's just inferred through the dialogue and the way that they interact. And I liked that part of it.
Yeah, I did too. That's why I'm like, the way they're able to keep that stuff consistent, and keeping track of it doesn't feel like a chore. I think it's great, and it's giving me high hopes for where they're going to go at the end of this episode, or at the end of the season rather, and hopefully, if we're lucky enough that we get multiple seasons, where it's going to go in the future. Yeah,
and they're doing some heavy lifting too with the previously on every once in a while. Like I would not have remembered that exact way that Brother Dawn answered the question about what they should do with the Anacreons, and the fear versus the strength that they need to show. I wouldn't have remembered that exact line, but they show it at the beginning.
So I'm a good control case, because like I had to travel hell getting back home this weekend from Portland. So I had to watch a lot of this. Most of my watches in this episode were on my cell phone or on my tablet. Yikes. And in a version that didn't have any previously on. It was just credits to credit sequence to end credit sequence. But I didn't feel like I missed a beat. But I'm watching these episodes several times a week, and really boning up on it, listening to the official podcasts, lurking on our Discords and the subreddit and all that kind of stuff. So like, I feel like I'm really plugged into the show. But you're right. It's nice that they have that for people who are only watching it once and just kind of having fun with it, because
or a little slow, memory challenge like me.
This is challenging. It's not. I mean, it's so much more accessible than the original material, though. I will say that.
Yes, I agree. The stories they're telling are more personal,
right, and therefore relatable.
Yeah.
So they're doing a great job at the adaptation, I think.
I agree. Maybe we should get into the beginning of this episode.
Let's do it.
All right, we start off with Brother Dawn leaping from a tower, presumably to his death, but he's saved by his personal shield. A palace attendant witnesses it and runs off. And then we get kind of a funeral montage, let's say, for what looks to be a very powerful religious figure, which we'll find out later exactly all the details of this stuff. There are some rockets fired off. They hit a planet. Demerzel is looking at all this through a hollow feed. Yeah, it's interesting. I was trying to figure out what was happening here, and I was guessing along the way. Like, as I'm writing my notes, I'm like, oh, I think this is a religious figure. I think this is a funeral ceremony. I think this is essentially like the papal smoke, things like that. And yes, that's exactly what it turned out to be.
And it's interesting because I've gone kind of back and forth on the Gale narration, but like I think it's clearly a vital part of the show, the storytelling. But I think it really worked again in this episode, because she's contrasting, psychohistory's helplessness to forecast individual events, and like the Empire jumping off and trying to kill himself as a singular event, a singular individual. But
Yeah.
like, Harry stuff excels at, picking up societal trends and religious fervors and things like that. And the death of this religious figure in this religious movement that we'll grow to appreciate is called the Luminance, I believe. That's a movement. That's a faith. That's something that holds sway over, I think, 3 trillion people. They said it out of 8 trillion in the galaxy. But yet that's an individual that brought, like, an individual death brought that the mass reaction at individual death. And it's like they keep on doing these, like, I call it like looking at different ends of the telescope, where it's like, one individual's death had this profound impact and is having this huge impact on the galaxy. One individual's not death has a very intimate effect on a singular person. And especially when you talk about like how this religious is going to be over the singular versus, the multiple and whether they have souls or not. I just thought that stuff was a great way to tie. Again, they always come back. It's like, I think it is a challenge to keep people engaged in the Terminus stuff, because, as you said, the Empire stuff is just so much more colorful, and has so much more lore, and just, like it seems like the stakes are bigger.
Mm-hmm.
But just clearly keep building these narrative links between the two halves, I think, is working really well. And also they're just interleaved better this episode. It wasn't the Lord of the Rings style. Here's a book that's got Frodo and Sam, and then you go, oh god, I got an Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli book before we get back and find out what's going on. Having this being a little bit, it works so much better, and that's because they've, the character of time, much like Gale has been, kind of took a ride in the sleeper ship. We dispense with time for just an episode, and it really helped the narrative, I thought.
Yeah, it's pared back a little because we're not jumping around so much.
Must have been a lot easier to break. And they even mentioned in the official podcast, like how much time it took to break those first 3 episodes. And then they just really started firing like on this episode forward. So maybe that means there's not going to be as many massive jumps back and forth, that we're going to have it feels like the stage is set for this first crisis, and we can kind of stay here, maybe some flashbacks and some stuff like that, but like a whole episode, if 400 years in the future, I don't know if we're going to do that again this season. Well, who knows? So I have questions about this. What is Dawn up to here? And we find out, of course, more about what's going to happen with him later in the episode. But initially, it looks to be some sort of way for him to, because you remember last episode where we left him, right? He had just grown up into a young man, and a shit.
Sure, he erased the mural above his crib, right? Which I assume
like a shit do.
Did he have, like, I don't know, was there a Metallica mural up next to the to the one that Brother Dusk had painted for him? Is there?
Yeah, that was the day he moved out of his crib. He's like, I'm too big for all this stuff. I need to.
Wow.
Then he put up the Metallica posters. Yeah, sure.
It's like our cat outgrowing the cat bed. Is this like his attempt to break the stagnation of the Empire? What has he learned lessons from what Brother Dusk tried to teach him? Because there's a lot of like out of step type of stuff with Brother Dawn in this episode. He's not falling in exactly in line. He's not lifting his wine glass the exact same way in the exact same hand.
He's missing his verbal cues. Yeah,
right. He's like late with the salute at times, and
way too old for him to be doing this shit too. The old 9-year-old Brother Day, or Dawn, who's now Brother Day, was much more on it. Sure. It seemed to me at an earlier age. So what do you think they're suggesting? Because I got my theories.
I mean, my guess is that he's experiencing some kind of like angst, because he is a young man, right? He's like 18, 19, I think they said. And that he has a lot of issues about who he is, who they are, and whether any of this is right or makes sense, as things are sort of unfurling in the Empire.
Yeah, they had that thing about man at the end of his life, getting angsty about his legacy, and I wonder if that is the same about young men at the beginning of their life, because traditional empire, this would be a young kid, ambitious, vying for his father's spot, and as soon as he's capable, like who knows, this is just all regiment. Like, no, regardless of how ready you are to rule the empire, you got to wait till you're 30, man.
Mm-hmm.
And also I kept on comparing this to like, cause I just marathoned The Sopranos, like Tony Soprano always was talking about he was born too late. Like the real, like this was like, this was the post Rico, kind of like turning the lights off, last call, I guess, turning the lights on, everybody time, the good times are over.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if he was in his dad's era, his Uncle June's era, and it was, the money was easy, and there's some honor to it, and people didn't snitch on you. I feel like that the empire, that Brother Don might be feeling a little bit about that like he is living in a empire in decline, even though there's these advanced metrics that the mathematicians are, assuring that, oh no, we're still growing, still flourishing. Man, we still got this 35-year-old pit in our world that's causing problems to our reactors and causing riots and shit. I wonder if part of it is just him like being the first to kind of experience this decline and like not knowing what to do with it. Yeah. It's also plausible that the teenage empire is just kind of a shit, and they go through a period where like he knows how to do everything right. He's just kind of being rebellious. And maybe this happens to all of them. But
yeah, this is
I feel like
it could be the idea that you can't predict an individual, right? Like, oh, you can predict that all the Cleons will be roughly the same, but what about that individual? Yeah.
Especially when it seems like this brother, I mean, I remember the other brother Day was like really kind and patient. It felt like, and not telling the kid, like, hey, you're a pussy for being afraid, but like showing like, well, what you need to do when you're feeling afraid is be strong for the people. Whether you agree with that, but whether you agree with what he was doing, right or wrong, it doesn't matter. He was actually mentoring this child, where the current brother Day, the old brother Don, has zero patience for this kid.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'm wondering,
let's say he's dealing with a 19-year-old versus a 9-year-old, right? So you can maybe understand. Right. You need to pick this stuff up, kid. You got 10 years before you're going to be me. So
right, yeah. The other thing I wonder is like, is it possible that there's some genetic drift going on, like that this cloning process isn't 100%? Because like, yeah, they talked about his pain, and I think you're supposed to read that as pain from the injury, that like, maybe some of that kinetic energy popped through. There's a lot of questions I have about that, but like also like maybe there's something physically wrong with the Emperor.
I hadn't considered that. Yeah, I wonder how much more we're going to learn about the cloning process and its infallibility versus what the truth might be.
And it seems like there's a whole bunch of shit we're going to like. There's a lot of fucking, check off statements in this episode, and like foreshadowing, like the fact that, the Prime Emperor has never set foot off Trantor since the beginning of the genetic life. Well, we're about to do, like, I had a whole bunch of questions like, well, what if one of these clones just dies in the middle of a decanting sequence, like at 15 or 45 or whatever? Do they have like, because they had mini clones, like, do they have like all kinds of different stages, or like, do they just thaw one out early, or do they skip a dusk generation? Like, what do they do? And I bet we get the answers to some of this, because it seems like the Empire's really heading towards some rough times, man.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing all that. I have so many other questions about this very first scene, right? There's like Demerzel's reaction to the religious funeral here. She has a very emotional reaction to it. She's seen crying essentially, and I'm wondering why. Is this a consequence of her true faith? Does she see this as a very sad thing because she's a member of the Luminists, or is this some portent that she sees in the fall of the Empire, the truth of Hari Seldon's words sort of coming to a beginning, right? The beginning of the end, as they say at the end of the episode.
Did it seem like Demerzel was watching Comet Shoemaker Levy hit Jupiter?
That planet looks a hell of a lot like Jupiter.
And it looked a hell of a lot like what I've seen a representation of that comet hitting. And I wonder, like, what the hell are they trying to suggest?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just like cosmic, because they talk about the clockwork of civilization, right? Like, that I'm not sure exactly, but it felt like that's what they were suggesting there. And I wasn't sure, maybe the inevitability or the unfeeling of the cosmos, that like if Jupiter had been a populated planet, it would have been just fucked up pretty bad. So I don't know what they're playing at there.
Yeah, there is some interesting stuff they're doing with the voiceover and Faith, specifically because they're trying to push it sort of out of the purview of control by any human being, right? By any entity that we understand. They push it into the purview of the infinite, which is interesting because, yes, you could say, okay, what happens after death is certainly not controllable by humans. But then you could also say that humans are inherently the source of religion. And therefore, Hari Seldon could easily predict what would happen with the religions of the galaxy, right? So it then comes nicely back into the purview of humanity through psychohistory. It's super interesting. Right.
Yeah, no, I if anything, this makes the psychohistory stuff more interesting than I remember it being in the books.
Yeah.
And that was like the big draw. So like, yeah, I 100% agree with all that.
Okay, let's move on here to Brother Day's servant. Well, wanting to serve him, let's say, serve him up a slice of herself, I'd say. He asks that she try and touch him, and he demonstrates how his personal shield works. And then Demerzel interrupts them with an urgent matter. And I couldn't help but think, as I'm watching this very, very slow touch getting through the shield, that there's one flaw in the shield plan, and it is the Saving Private Ryan's slow knife stab. Would not be prevented by the shield, right? It'd be the softest of knife touches.
This is they're borrowing a page from Dune because they have like all the royals wear a personal shield, and there's a whole school of knife fighting and fighting like getting that knife. Just you want to be very fast, but like the last that you have to get it like just very smooth in at the end.
Nice.
I first of all, this is a great scene. It works because Lee Pace is very fucking sexy.
Of
and
course.
This didn't feel like creepy or gross. It feels like, I don't know, there might be a billion men and women that line up outside the royal household to want to service him for 24 hours just for like, like there's a lottery for it. Like you got to pay the fucking Fast Pass Plus to get ahead of that line. Because he just like this would come across really cringy if
it's
he just wasn't like
the thirst games. I've seen the Hunger Games. This is the thirst games.
The thirsty games. Yeah, no, this she's the winner for today, and she's not even gonna get the ride the e-ticket. I thought that it's neat, and also every question you have about the way this force field works is directly connected to the shit going on at Terminus, which I thought was a brilliant way to the same technology that protects the Empire protects our whole. Well, I bet we're gonna find some ways that stuff is exploited. Like if this guy took a header from like 10 stories and got busted up or bruised or a little bit sore. Like that shows that the thing's not perfect. Like how much power does it take to overwhelm it? Or maybe it's all about, the sneaky side of things.
Yeah.
I thought that stuff was great, and they're setting it up real early in this scene.
Yeah, for sure. Then we get a scene where Ambassador Thanwall tells Empire that Proxima Opal has died. And Empire approves her new successor and conveys her condolences to the conclave. However, there's some debate over who that next successor should be. There's a movement forming behind a radical, which obviously disturbs Empire. And Demerzel tells the ambassador they'll be in touch soon, as I think it's Lee Pace or Brother Dusk. Brother Dusk might storm off here.
I didn't take it because I was flying. I didn't get a chance to look at this, but is this Ambassador Thanwell the Hammer from House of Cards? He looked
No,
very
I don't think so.
familiar. Okay, he looked very familiar, and I thought I saw a little bit of a or no, not the maybe not the Hammer, the editor at the newspaper from House of Cards.
It might be him. I don't know.
Yeah, he looked very familiar. He looked very familiar from Prestige TV. But again, I just want to on the looks and feel department. I fucking love the way the Empire like speaks as one.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also really effective to show that this little teenager kid, the 19-year-old, is completely out of sync. Like you said, not just on the voice, like how impressive that would be for them to all to say our condolences, and then them to like gesture all at the same to like, you know, get out of here to the right, as like the inevitability of like, you can't stick around. And you feel the weight of this guy be like, well, actually, I do need to stick around. And then him dropping to his knees as soon as Empire was up. This shit just really tells the tale of the power, but also the kind of seemingly beginning of the fragility of it. Like these commands are no longer inevitable. They are not obeyed as like the law of gravity. They're a little bit more of a suggestion nowadays, just in even the decorum inside the palace. I thought that stuff was really good.
And the fragility inherent in its rigidity. I mean, like, you know, if you are so inflexible that you can't adapt to a situation that comes up, such as, you know, what happened 35 years ago in the aftermath, then you're bound to break, right?
Well, and if the people don't like a ruler, you know, you could the dad can always step down and you could roll the dice with the son, or, you know, but like this, you're never like, what the hell does it even mean for Day to step down and turn it over to Dawn? Like, it's interesting. All these things that like Harry Seldon essentially prophesied come true, and they make that point later in the episode. I also love Lee Pace. Lee Pace is doing a lot in this episode.
Yeah,
he gets an eye twitch going when they start talking about the luminance and the Zephyr Halima that's like preaching what is this doctrine of the primary octaval? I think is the doctrine that says that singular beings get singular souls, and essentially implying that clones are lack souls and are, I guess,
individuated, like, you know, sentience is how they're going to describe it next scene.
Yeah.
That's super interesting to talk about. I love this next scene. It's so good. Let's just talk about it. We go. Dusk is personally going to go to the conclave to smooth things over, because this primary octavo belief system is causing a schism in the church, and it also potentially undermines their authority as the emperor, because the doctrine essentially says that clones don't have souls. And then Brother Day has to explain and kind of school Dawn in why this is a problem. But like, as I'm watching this scene, I'm hearing the doctrine. I'm going, okay, that's definitely going to be a problem for the power base of a clone dynasty, right? Oh, clones don't have souls. Oh, you're actually like an abomination, and 3 trillion of the people in your empire no longer support you. Big problem. And then he goes on to have to explain that to Dawn. I found it almost funny in a way.
Yeah, and how, like, and that's the thing, is like, maybe Day is not impatient, maybe Dawn is just slow and is like not getting this stuff, because you know, he's 19 years old, he should be able to see, I think, without being handheld. But like, on the other hand, he's kind of being handheld for the audience's benefit, right?
Sure.
So, but I like that when she's like, oh, that means they won't see us as human, and Brother Day's like, that's not the problem. The problem is that they start seeing us as less than instead of more than, because you know, if we're more than them, then, you know, well, hey, you know, let the blue bloods do everything. We're just commoners. What can we do? But if they start seeing, I mean, this is Game of Thrones, right? This is like why Tywin, you know, like every time Cersei and Jaime would get like lippy about, or, you know, defiant about being open with he's like, look, you have to have the respect and legitimacy of the people. And if you don't, because they think your sons are the sons of incest and inbreeding and all that, then our house is fucked. And I think Brother Day's trying to teach that same lesson to the slow brother Dawn.
Yeah, we get more on how Brother Dave feels about this later in the episode, right? Because he's going to point the finger eventually at Brother Dusk and his a hardline attitude toward everything, but also his seemingly laissez-faire attitude about very real problems developing within the Empire and what should be pretty obvious fallout. I mean, yes, well, there's an era issue here, right? There's an era where the Empire was all powerful before Harry Seldon's predictions, which I think, Brother Dusk is well within that era. And then there's the era after where the Empire is showing cracks. And I think that's why, these two people have such different worldviews, is because one was, grew up in an empire that was all powerful and couldn't be touched and it ruled by might. And then the other grew up in an era where that was potentially on the table for discussion, right?
Yeah, and I even liked how they kind of held our hand to talk about, like, because well, the Empire's so powerful, they've been black holes. Why is this so important? This is a faith that has sway over 3 trillion people. That's like what 2/5 apparent or thereabouts of the galactic population of 8 trillion. Which I remember thinking that was kind of low when they talked about it, but like it does give you, it's almost a 1-to-1 map of the globe. If you found that like a religion encompassing 3 billion people was up in arms about something, that's a absolute threat to the geopolitical stability of planet Earth. So when you have 8 trillion people and 3 of them are going, mad over some doctrinal schism, that's got to be a worrisome thing. And like you can see the concern, because like Dusk instantly just gets up and starts like, I'm going out for a diplomatic mission. We can't hollow transmission this shit. It's too important. I like that touch too.
Yeah, I liken it to the way I'm thinking about it is sort of like if you had a virus that was eating you from the inside out, and it was eating, let's say 40%, roughly 30-40% of your body. Well, it's like a zombie virus, right? Like, oh, you got a leg bite and it's infecting you. Well, cut off the leg, right? And that's going to be painful, but it'll preserve your life. Well, what happens if you get the shoulder bite, the torso bite, right? The thing that you can't root out without killing you. And that's what this is like. If these are vital parts of the Empire that are starting to believe these things, that you are less than, as opposed to more than, you're not going to be able to cut those things out. It has the potential to destroy the Empire. And that's what they're so worried about here. It's not something where they can just go blow up the outer reaches, right?
Right. And that's because, the outer that's like the barbarian, quote unquote, kingdoms is like the amputation of a foot.
Exactly. Yeah.
But now they've got like lymphomic cancer, because it implies that these things are much more close to core world, much huger in scale. It's going to be a real problem for them.
Yeah.
And that quote about like, we are a glass vessel spun with a fine hand. If our pressures inside aren't uniform, we may burst. Well, boy, the pressures are not uniform within this Trinity. Doesn't seem like it at all.
No, it's demonstrated so well, too, with the wine glass itself, because Brother Dawn, when he reaches for his wine glass, he picks it up with the wrong hand. Like the other two are reaching for it with the right hands. He reaches for it with his left, notices it and swaps hands. And then they make the wine glass analogy. And I'm like, yes. Okay.
Yeah. They're not pulling in the same direction, same pressure. No, it's going to be bad.
Yeah. So then we go to Terminus and we're back with Salvor, still surrounded by Anacreons. They demand that she take them through the fence to the tower. So they all approach the fence. Salvor claims she can only get one of them through. And they tell her, come back soon with our leader or we'll destroy the city. Once through the fence, they hop in her speeder and head toward town. Salvor, there's the brief detour where she sees this boy again, almost crashes. And then takes a shortcut toward the vault, which obviously knocks out the Anacreon. And then she takes the Anacreon's gun and drives back into town with her new prisoner. Pretty good.
Clever. Yeah. Like it, like she says, I'm the worst person you could have picked up in this whole damn settlement because I've got to get out of held hostage free card. And it absolutely works. So the Anacreons claim that they're here to scavenge a navigational system so that they can continue fleeing the devastation that the Empire wrought in the pilot episodes. To be honest, I don't see any reason to not believe this is true.
Other than Salvor's intuition or whatever ability she had, because she says there's something bigger here that she's missing. And I believe that.
But she also says that, like, she herself wants to die and wants everyone to die. I don't know. I could be way off here, but I had this inkling idea that the tension that she doesn't get is that that this woman personally has lost too much and she does want to die, but she's trying to get her people to safety. It's kind of like Frodo, you know, like could Frodo, be. Like he didn't save the Shire for himself. He was too far gone, but he did save it for the people he loved. I wonder if that's the contradiction that's being picked up here. Yeah, it's just the thing I was wondering about.
I'm kind of hoping there's another layer to it. Like I said at the beginning, this is the least interesting part of the episode for me. It's not bad. It's just it's not engaging me nearly as much as the Empire stuff.
It's not Lee Pace screaming people to death.
It is. It's not that. So if they could do something to add another wrinkle to what's happening over on Terminus, and I know they will. Having read the first book, I know there's stuff coming that is going to blow this whole thing wide open. So I'm waiting for that stuff to happen, and just hoping it will stay, you know, as high quality as it's been in the meantime.
Yeah,
we do get a lot more information about the shield and the way it works, the fence as they call it. It's DNA recognition and only lets certain people through if they're in the database, and it uses some kind of radiation to, I guess, murder you if you try and walk through it. Is how they describe it. And I don't know if any of this is going to be important, but that's how it works.
I do wonder, what do you think about this boy? I mean, it's very. Do we even need to talk about this like it's a theory? Because it seems clear, especially when we see this boy doing the thing that Raish said that he did when he first met, you know, Harry Seldon. Like, it seems very clear that they're drawing a connection between her and Raish. And, you know, we talked about this in, I think, the feedback section, or maybe we've talked about it in the main show proper. Seems like there's a lot of legs to the idea that Salvor is the child of Raish and probably the Gale, right?
Yeah, you could definitely be right about that. It makes me wonder if we're going to see something more concrete. Like if they showed me a scene of 35 years ago when they landed on Terminus and Raish goes up to the vault and is unaffected, you know, much like Salvor. I think that would do a lot to connect it. But in the meantime, yeah, I think that's a pretty good guess.
Because they also had, you know, they also very much imply that, like, Salvor might be intended by Harry to be like a vital thing, a vital cog in his machine. But psychohistory doesn't work with individuals. So like, even if he, like, you know, at his statistical math board, his calculus board, saw that, oh, if I put Raish together with Gale and she's very intuitive and he like I'm going to get that, like, it's still like, I don't feel like psychohistory would work that way. So I wonder if are there components of psychohistory that have to work because, like, people have faith in it, or I'm wondering how they'll square, like, this singular special individual that seems like it was maneuvered by Seldon with the idea that psychohistory is kind of useless in predicting and steering the individual fates of people.
Yeah, there's a connection. The math stuff is interesting, right? The stuff they're doing in this coin flipping scene later on is in some way tying Salvor to psychohistory, the Prime Radiant, right? She had some inherent interest in the Prime Radiant when she encountered it briefly, though she didn't really know how to interpret it. Much like I don't think she knows how to interpret her affinity with the Vault either. So yeah, there's something they're doing there that's bigger than just like she's gotten some lucky power. I don't think this is a case of like an individual just happening to develop something. I think they're doing more than that.
Yeah, and it could be wrong, like her parents' speculation and people just general speculation about her being it could just this could all just be misdirection. But I don't know. It feels like, especially the more I thought about that feedback we got about how it seemed like Gale had certainly intuitive like she was trained to be a seer. Now we don't know if seers are the real fucking deal or if they're just kind of this like the millennia in the future like astrology, or is this is like
right.
some real kind of like Children of the Forest shit from Game of Thrones. I'm not sure how real this magic is, but like she was from that line and she was trained as that, and you know she's having zygote babies in space. Boom, you there. That's all you need to make a magic space baby. Apparently, that seems like a lot of legs for that theory. Anyway.
All right, we go to back at town. Salvor and her parents debate what to do about the Nacrions. Her father tells her that the people made her warden, so she should decide to do. Which, yeah, and this is the line, repeated luck is more than just luck, which will come back later in the episode.
Clark Peters does a really good job at selling all of this stuff. He brings a gravitas, and they talked about in the official podcast, like it's really hard to give a speech. It's kind of like you're the hero of the show, and you're the hero of the show because you've got this heroic quality, and not make it seem kind of hackneyed and a little corny. And you do the best job you can writing it, but then you give it an actor that can effortlessly give it that bottom, and that's what you got. Yeah,
for sure.
Then the violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. She's like, that's an old man's philosophy. He's like, it's an observation I made when I was younger than you. Like,
yeah.
The show is showing a lot, because like, do you think that they're using her dad as kind of like the baseline? Like her mom might be too far in a pendulum one way, and she might be too far the other. But her she is a little bit brash maybe and ill-considered, saying that like like abhorring violence is an old man's thing, and he's like no, I came to this realization young. I think they are trying to show that she is not like, this is not a Mary Sue character. She can definitely fuck up, make mistakes, have poor judgment, but still be the voice that the colony needs to listen to.
Yeah, they're doing a good job with her indecisiveness, her lack of faith in herself, I think. When Hugo has to kind of talk her down later this episode, where she's like, what if Lewis is right? What if I am fucking up the plan? What if everything I do is a mistake? And he says, well, what if Selden, what if you are Selden's plan? She's not considering the other side of it. She's too close to it to really step back and judge it objectively. So,
yeah. I also thought it was weird because like they maybe Warden. I don't quite understand the title of Warden.
I don't know,
because
Protector.
It seemed like it was town cop, right? I was thinking in terms of a game warden, like she was there to protect the frontier, the town from the frontier and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's also one of those things where it's like the president, where in like times of war, there's a switch gets flipped and like the warden is ultimate authority. Because it's hard for me to square everything we know about Hardin, the fact that she's a pariah that kind of creeps people out, even though they don't know her primary kind of creepy power.
Mm-hmm.
That like they made her, they invested in it. Like it's one thing if she's like essentially the ranger, like Aragorn was in Lord of the Rings, but it didn't quite. I didn't quite track that the people would invest. Maybe they thought that there's almost no chance of them being attacked, so that those war powers would never invest in her.
I think that's it. Yeah, she is in her element here, and no one ever expected to need her element. So,
or maybe she doesn't have and her father, she doesn't really have these emergency powers, and her father's just encouraging her to take them because
it could be.
And we see like
who else is going to, right? And they don't know what to do about this.
Yeah, who's the guy? Lewis?
Yeah, Pyrie
is the Foundation Council person. Like, yeah, he doesn't have what it takes for sure.
No, he doesn't. I can't imagine a guy who looks more like a Lewis. So good job in casting. All right, next scene is Brother Don sitting and sketching the attendant that he saw earlier. He asks Shadow Master Obrecht to get him the name of the palace attendant who saw him jump.
Shadow Master.
My biggest question after watching this episode the first time, I may have figured it out the second time, but it's sketchy, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
How does Obrecht have anywhere near enough information at the end of this scene to go on? I get that he's supposed to be, you know, a Varys type master spy who can almost divinate what the Emperor wants and needs in any moment, but like there is no information. He simply says an attendant. Now he's got this sketch, and I think, you know, Obrecht comments on it, so maybe he's assuming that the sketch he's drawing is the person he's supposed to go get information on.
Because my first observation is I want to push back. Are we sure he's sketching that attendant? Because I paused and then went and compared the sketch. It doesn't look anything like her.
I think he's sketching their love child. Like if it was a cross
I think
between
it does
him and that
look
woman.
like it looks like Brother Dawn with slightly better hair.
Yes.
Yes. And like it could just be a self-portrait, because I feel like that's that they might be painting a Narcissus tale here, you know, like.
But then the question becomes, how the hell does he know who Dawn is talking about?
If they mentioned like the shift and like the location, then I think that the Shadow Master could, but they don't. You're right, they don't. I don't know. I guess you're like he would like get follow-up questions, or
he would, but he just walks off.
I wonder though, do you think that the like Goyer and the showrunners like thank their lucky stars every day that Game of Thrones preceded them, because they can just say shit like Shadow Master Obrecht?
Sure.
And we kind of like, right, that's a Varys type. That's exactly what you think. Like,
exactly.
This is the, like, because he said, he corrected him. He's like, you're like the Grand Marshal. He's like, I'm the Shadow Master Obrecht. Mm-hmm. Like, the Master of Shadows, eh? Kind of like the Master of Whispers. Okay, I can translate that.
Yeah.
It must be nice that a fantasy show came before to kind of like get people's appetite for this much kind of politicking and scheming and things, you know? Like really busted that into the genre, because clearly there's a lot of influence on that. And you know, that's the thing. Martin was influenced by Dune, Foundation, all this other stuff. So it's a nice cross pollination. But
and I don't know how much of this is. I assume like none of this is in the books, or if it is, it's in prelude stuff, because this is the Empire is not. The Empire is a non-entity in that first book.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm way out of my depth, like speculating on what is and isn't in the books at this point. But whether it is or not, the lineage of this stuff for sure helps.
100%. I assume that anything involving the brothers is an expansion of material from the novels. It's or an outright addition.
Yeah. So then Salvor, back on Terminus, hands out weapons and gives people directions on where to post up. Tells them not to engage the Anacreons, just to report. And then she takes Hugo to interrogate the Anacreon. We find out her name is Farah, somewhere along the route here. She picks up on her tragic backstory thanks to her scars and ends the interrogation with Farah shouting at them. Outside, she tells her mother and Hugo that she recognized the name that she was shouting, which was Larkin Kane. Kane is the the subtitle says. I'm just gonna say Kane. She connects it to the dispute. What's that?
I love their chicken basket.
Yes,
Larkin Canes.
Larkin's
so good. Honey mustard. Mwah.
Sure. She connects it to this dispute that caused the destruction of Anacreon and Thespis in the first place 35 years ago that we saw in the first few episodes, and then figures out that Farah is the Grand Huntress of Anacreon. Sounds important.
Kind of like the Master of Shadows. It seems like she's they identify her. The Grand Huntress is the supreme military commander of this Anacreon faction.
Yeah.
So, and she's really important because she's got this sacred bow. Also, like we remember, the Empire gave those gifts back in a Tiff. So like all like it does feel like the lines aren't quite connected yet because the story is still, but like it does feel like they're doing this kind of like butterfly flaps. And you know, look, you got this hurricane in the barbarian kingdoms. I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah. That's a pretty big butterfly that flapped, right? The destruction of 50% of the population and subsequent 20 to 30%. Yeah. Big wings on that butterfly.
Right. Crowns and Cats. Did you hear on the official podcast like what these were denominations?
I was not paying super close attention because I was also refining my notes. So refresh my memory.
The crowns are supposed to represent, because you got the one like figure that's kind of like shrouded in a robe, and then you've got two circles beside him, and that's supposed to represent the triune figurehead of the empire.
Sure.
And the backside cats, I guess, is supposed to represent a bishop claw, and they even said on the official podcast, it's like doesn't really make sense because this is an obscure outer rim animal that like hardly anyone has ever heard of, but like they just kind of went with it because it was a very recognizable under production. And who knows, maybe this is something they minted out at Trantor, or I'm sorry, Terminus, for Terminus currency.
I was wondering, is this an imperial like a wide currency?
I think you're supposed to. Yeah, I think you're supposed to. I think it is, and they just did a rule of cool to make it a bishop's claw. But like, I don't know. It's like it's a cat. Who the fuck knows if it's a bishop's claw or not? That's just something David was saying on the podcast.
Well, I mean, they probably put a whole bunch of different things on the back, right? Yeah, you've got the emperor on the front, but on the back,
That's
you can put whatever, like a stamp, you know?
They have the 50 billion different states in the empire. They all get every year their own core. It takes they've hardly made it through a 0.0001% of their coinage, but they're going to get there. They're going to get there. That's how ambitious the empire is. They think they're going to be around that long.
Yeah. I assume they have like basketball players in the empire, and they get their commemorative coins every once in a while.
Sure. You got you got that. You got the Mount Rushmore of the three. I guess all the Mount Rushmores would just be the same three faces, right?
Probably, yeah. The same one face, judging by the front.
Yeah, you could just do that. You could do just that. Yeah. Mount Pacemore is what it would be called.
There's some interesting stuff technologically, maybe with ramifications for the future that they're doing here, because Hugo, when he's talking to her in Anacreon, whatever their language is, he also reveals to her by way of pressing on his temple, like massaging his temple a little bit, which flashes his bright blue thespian eyes.
Yeah.
And she picks up on that. Is this... We speculated, right, a couple episodes ago about is this guy like hiding the nature of his eyes? What is he using some technology to do that? Is this surgically altering them? What happened here? I think what we understand in this episode is it is a technology, and that it's sort of it's not that stable. Like if you get hit in the wrong spot on your head, or if you press just right in this one location, I don't think that's a feature. I think that's a bug, and he knows about the bug, and he's using it to show.
I thought it was some kind of pressure, like you do a certain swirl pattern and it like turns it off, or it could be disrupting, because like I think it's supposed to stand at the combat. It seems explicitly designed so that he can trade amongst everyone in the outer planets without any prejudice, you know, like dragging him down.
But then maybe get some sweet deals on Thespis if he turns it off for a second.
Yeah. When he comes back home, he can turn on the baby blues. But it's funny because I mentioned that like last episode, like what the fuck? What is up with the eyes? Are they just because they don't want the hunk? No, it had a nice satisfying answer. Yeah.
And I can't help but think it's going to come into play in the future if it's that easy to flip these things on and off. I expect something more from that.
This intuition she has is pretty powerful, though. Like, not only does it help her like see like it looks like there's like a precog, but also and they mentioned on a podcast that this was kind of like you're supposed to understand that this is like a focus and a totem. You know, like this is the coin power is kind of like the thing she does to kind of like get her powers in sync, you know, kind of like a warm up, or the way like maybe a basketball player, if we're talking about basketball players, has like, you know, the ritual where they like fake at the free throw line, you know, you bounce 3 times, you pretend to shoot, you wipe your hands in your yeah, you kind of have a ritual, and like this,
or like Gale repeating prime numbers, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. That's this focusing exercise that they both have is interesting. There's another connection between the two. Well done.
And I think there's a connection here with the prime radiant too, right? It's the mathematics, that intuitive sort of feel for mathematics, statistics, and that's really what the prime radiant contains, right? Is a bunch of statistics about how the universe is likely to work in any given scenario.
Yeah, I still hope she doesn't just intuit how to twist the psychohistory cube, but like, there's definitely, you think
there's like some second phase of her power that's going to unlock with the vault if she can figure out how to communicate with it?
That's a good question. I don't know, because again, I didn't remember any psychic stuff in the first book.
No.
So I feel like that they are laying some track. I don't know exactly where it's going. But like, yeah, this is full on, like, not just precognition, but being able to almost read a person's mind.
I
wonder, wild. Tons of questions about that and how they're going to kind of like balance that and explain how, again, because this is a singular person with it. And again, it's not like, oh, the way that they're the people around her treat this isn't like, oh yeah, you're one of those people who's got the ESP shit, or you're one of the ones who got the psyker gene. It's like, you're special. We've never seen shit like this before.
Mm-hmm.
In a world that's got seers and everything, right? So like, I need a couple more episodes before I feel like I'm comfortable putting these pieces together. But like, it seems like they are hinting that she's got a real power, and how do you balance that with the rest of the story? It's going to be fascinating.
Mm-hmm. All right, then we go to Dawn and Dusk watching riots on Trantor, which are caused by the fall of the Star Bridge. Dusk tells Dawn that he'll need to work on this problem with Brother Day, which is intimidating to him. I get the feeling that he's a little scared of Brother Day. Day enters and then tells them that the Terminus comms buoy is offline, and he shows them all these predictions made by Hari Seldon of exactly the things that are happening now. And then Day takes Dusk to task for not dealing with the fallout from Seldon's trial and his death.
It looks like Brother Day, the former Brother Dawn, is scared that Harry's predictions are in fact true, and that Brother Day could have taken those, or I guess Brother Dusk now could have taken those seriously instead of dismissing them. He said, like, he all but gave you a to-do list.
Yeah.
And you ignored it. And, you know, well, that's because he's a charlatan. Well, I don't think Brother Day is so sure about that. And he has that great line about martyrs tend to have a long half-life, which is ironic, right? Because you cut a person's life in short, you know, half-life, but also half-life from a radioactive decay those things can, you know, hang around for thousands of years. Interesting.
Yeah, just look at Jesus.
Sure, half-life on that Christanium is really long. Over 2,000 years and going strong.
They're doing a lot of good stuff here with Brother Day's characterization, and you mentioned how they're doing stuff to really distinctly draw lines between characters even as they age. And I think one of those things that they're doing is having Brother Dusk, you know, the former Brother Day, who was in charge when the Anacreon stuff happened and Hari Seldon trial happened. He's talking about how the Sinkers are the problem here, right? Like, they're the ones causing the violence. He says he's putting the blame on the people themselves rather than himself, which eventually we know Brother Day is going to point the finger back at him by the end of this episode. But it very much shows like who this guy is.
Mm-hmm.
And another interesting thing they're doing in this scene that I really loved, it's the twist of mathematics here, because there's this discussion when Day enters, he says comms buoy is down. Brother Dawn is like, and that probably happens all the time, right? We've got what, 1,000 of these things, and Day is like,
right,
10,000. We have so many of these fucking things. one of these going down is totally inevitable on any given day, but then he says which one it is, and that totally reverses the math, right? It's this twist of like the odds of that specific one being the one to go down are so minimally, so infinitesimal that now you have to take it as like more meaningful, right? There's just a beautiful moment of twist there that I loved.
Yeah, because like, again, maybe it is a coincidence, but you got to at least check it out. Because,
for sure.
Like, what are the odds that this would happen while these other things are happening? While this, like the bad news comes in threes. Like, there's, you had your local unrest, then you had the religious schism, then you've got this buoy going out. Fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's significant now, statistically.
You'd be a fool not to at least investigate it, sure.
Right. And then we go to Louis Pyrene disagreeing with every decision Salvor has made, both with the Anacreons and seemingly her entire life. And he claims that she is destroying Selden's predictions by merely existing. She tells him, look, you idiot, you've ignored everything I've ever said about preparing for this exact situation of an attack. So I don't want to hear your bullshit. And then Louis takes the lead on this second phase of interrogation, which doesn't get them anywhere, as Salvor is off, trying to protect the colony here. And then seemingly dozens, I don't know, hundreds maybe of Anacreons are advancing on the fence while the lookouts are just freaking out about it
from all directions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good, like, I don't like Louis. He seems like he's a doofus.
Mm-hmm.
I vaguely remember there being a plot about the Council of the Foundation being kind of inept and overly, I don't know, like analysis paralysis, or maybe like overly reliant on Selden, making sure that everything's going to be fine. And is that because like I feel like that this is stuff that is definitely trying to hearken to that material.
Yeah, from what I recall, having read it a few short months ago, the council is largely inept or sort of out of touch with any of this vault stuff. They're kind of just waiting around. Yeah. Like, they know about what the vault is. They're waiting around. But they are kind of inept. The main characters here are still the same. I think I can't remember if Louis is like one of the big antagonists in the council. But there is an antagonist, and Hardin's kind of, the person with their sort of finger on the pulse of everything.
There's also that interesting thing where he's like, this is what I talked about in the beginning of the episode about the same science protects the Empire protects us. Well, how good is that weapon? And also, as Farah said, the weapon's only as good as the man who wields it. I don't know. Also, it's like it seems like this is setting up for like, I am no man kind of moment, because it's not, it's the warden that's going to be marshaling the town's defenses.
Sure. I wonder, in the books, and it's a product of the time when Asimov was writing these books, these early ones, nuclear power is like the biggest force that his imagination could muster at the time. And I wonder if this fence stuff with the radiation and the DNA matching is going to be sort of the nuclear engines or whatever that they talk about in the books, the nuclear power from books in the series. But it's specifically like the way she talks about this being a weapon, I think is interesting to me. I don't know. We'll have to see. I don't know where exactly they're going with this.
Yeah. Because it seems like I'm supposed to believe that this thing's impregnable. But like, I don't know, maybe they can just literally do the Gungan shield thing where they just walk up to it and slowly shoulder through it. And but yeah, I'm curious to see what is the fatal flaw in the system. Or maybe it's not. Like, because there's a whole lot of things that says that like, maybe things are going to work out. The Empire's going to check it out. They're going to find out the Anacreons are here. They're going to pulverize them. The shield's going to hold. There might be some scary things here and there, but like, yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how much to worry about it.
And I do wonder how closely this fence and the personal shields of the Emperor are related. Are they identical technologies? Is this something where the Emperor could code his personal shield for the DNA match of somebody else to let them through, and maybe he does that from time to time? Or are these two distinct technologies, one of which, can be muscled through very slowly, and the other of which is DNA coded and will murder you? Like it's not just going to stop you from doing bad things, it's going to kill you.
Yeah. It looks like it's very similar. Like it has the same kind of yellow sparkle effect. I think it looks very, very similar. And I'm sure it's going to be coded the same. Like I think that the empires can probably all touch each other. It's probably coded their DNA, right?
Likely, yeah.
That
would make sense. All right, we return to Brother Don, and so does Obrecht, with the name of the palace attendant, Azura O'Deely. Don asks him how to resolve this, and Obrecht replies, I can do it anyway. I'm a problem solver, which it coming out of this guy's mouth is pretty ominous to me.
Yeah.
But I don't think Don really takes it that way, even though he has the power to choose who lives or dies.
I feel like he got the message. I don't think he's that stupid. I feel like he definitely got the message that this is what he...
Okay.
Yeah,
he makes you're probably right.
Go away permanently.
Yeah, based on another scene later on. So anyway, Don goes to see Azura and threatens to punish her. She gives him medicine for his ouchies. He's acting very much like a child here. I don't know. He takes the medicine to another attendant to verify its effects before just gobbling it up, which is smart. I mean, good on him. The paranoia that these emperors must feel at any given moment is just off the charts.
Yeah, has to.
Yeah. And this is interesting too. In the context of what we see with the personal shields, they can't be touched, but they can be tricked. They're not superhuman when it comes to their mental abilities, I don't think. Everything about the show has told me that already. So yeah, if you can't beat someone physically, you can certainly manipulate them or trick them into causing their own demise.
And you can also that power is not inborn into them. Like we saw them take it off. Right. I think that's going to be something that we got to remember, the fact that they can deactivate, turn this off. And if someone bluffs or convinces them that they're trustworthy or works their way, like that might, I wonder actually there's no way she could be like a long-term sleeper agent, right? Because like, how would they know that the Emperor was going to jump out of his bedroom window right in front of her?
Yeah. You can't predict the actions of an individual. Over him. Certainly.
Yeah. I don't know. There might be some kind of like, is there like a synergy between the seers? Maybe the seers can predict the actions of an individual, and psychohistory can, vice versa. Maybe.
Yeah, I didn't see any face scars on this attendant. So.
Right, because you'd have to have the Anacreons working together with I forget the people that the Gale came from, but that could be because they were also backwater. So maybe you're having a backwater quote unquote barbarian brotherhood, the triple B, the better backwater brotherhood.
Sure. I don't know, man.
Better barbarian business bureau.
Yeah, we'll have to see where that goes. They mentioned Ikebana, which I looked it up as a Japanese art of flower arrangement. So the school that her mother started was devoted to that. So their whole family is botanist, or at least interested in plants.
Ate up with plants.
Yeah. And then Salvor is alerted to the approaching Anacreons, and her family and Hugo all spring into action. She sees a vision of the boy in the Imperial Library, which freaks her out. She thinks this vision is the Vault communicating with her, and Hugo's there to calm her with his absolute faith in her. Boy, does that seem ominous to you? When I hear someone repeat the phrase, "I have absolute faith in you," in the way that he repeated it in an episode that is devoted to faith, in all regards, I get a little bit of a twinge of ominous
You
feeling.
might, because I was about to be like, come on, what the fuck are you talking about? This is just like, being validated by a cool, awesome person you respect
Sure.
is a good thing.
It is that.
But you're right. There is a lot of this talk about faith, and
It's the term, the way he says it and the terms he used that make me think.
Yeah. And just because people are
That's
impressive
dangerous.
does not mean they will prevail. There is nothing written in this universe that says that the race goes to the swift and the contest to the mighty. Like there is nothing. Like there's a lot of luck that goes into things too. So yeah, maybe they are trying to suggest something like that.
I don't know. Or this could be the other side of the coin, right? This could be where the faith is warranted, where the faith is a positive, where the faith is not threatening, it's uplifting. That could also be what they're doing here.
Right.
The other thing that I noticed in this scene is when they're coming out of the Salvor's rushing out with their weapons, and there's some guy Muller out there in the yard, and he's like haranguing her about like, hey, you got an Anacreon warrior in there, we want to talk with her. There's like an element of schism within this group, or maybe not schism, it's more just like differing value sets or differing faith levels, I guess, within the people of Terminus.
I think it's fair to say that the finely spun vessel of Terminus is has all of its fluids in perfect pressure.
Sure.
Equalization. I think that's a fair observation to make, for sure.
And I like that they can show that in just passing here, right? Like of course, in this moment, you don't want to tell this guy, hell yeah, we got an Anacreon in there, and
Right.
the Anacreons are coming to kill us all too. So yeah, do your worst. It's your last day on Earth. Go crazy, man. You don't want any of that energy, but you also, I think, can trust that all these people who are here are at the very least somewhat bought into Harry Seldon's teachings, right? And that they would kind of welcome a crisis if this were the beginning of one.
And that's man, that can be a problem too, though, right?
Absolutely.
Like people who are like, I think that I don't know how big of a problem it is, but it is a problem that we have certain people in like evangelical circles that have a vested interest in shit going down in the Middle East. Like, like that can be a bad thing. Like, man, nothing in the Bible says you should like help or hinder that cosmic time clock. So like it could be that people who are true believers and adherents to the cause might take rash action, which that individual things the psychohistory can't account for, might throw off the whole calculation. So
yeah,
it's fun though, because like this is a real tension, because no one really knows what the fuck. No one knows anything, because like the two people that knew it took off early on in the mission. So
especially with this small group, right? If your calculations are all based on masses, how can you account for what's going to happen in Terminus when it's getting started, because it's so small of a group?
Yeah, we talked about like, and earlier, like, is Terminus enough of a mass of people that their psychohistory stuff will work on? Yeah, we'll find out. I'm sure, because I remember there being a lot of these questions in my mind about like when we're going through these, like in the books too, and like I felt like that they had answers for all that stuff. So I'm pretty sure everything's going to turn out satisfying. Maybe not fine for everyone at Terminus, but satisfying.
I think things are going to kick up a notch here pretty soon on Terminus. I'm excited.
I think
for that.
so. Yeah, I think we're going to have some noticeable uptick in action. Yeah, and answers. Get some answers.
Yeah. All right, so Brother Day has his theoretical mathematicians brought in, led by Tavole, to give him a progress report on their analysis of Harry Seldon's predictions. Tavole says his predictions are all bullshit, but he can't claim that there's a 0 chance that they're true. And when confronted with Day's anger, Tavole collapses, and there is a non-zero chance that he is dead.
I wonder, because when that first happened, I was like, because I know in like the David Lynch Dune, there like Paul Atreides actually has the ability to shout people to death. It's not in the book, but in the movie version. And there's also like the Harkonnens have like these heart plugs on their servants that they can just pull to instantly kill them. Like, and
Like
we
on
saw
a treadmill
Day
where
with,
you attach the thing to your shirt, so if you fall on your face, it doesn't kill you. Except the opposite?
I don't know. It looks just like a little plug that they wear in their heart. And you just pull it off and it just doesn't bleed out. Yeah, it's fucking crazy. I wondered they were heading towards that, but I think that like the Empire is just so scary when he's this mad at you. And this guy didn't look like he's that healthy, that he just like had a heart attack. He wasn't shouted to death, but he just had a heart attack. It's an incredible scene. Like, I can imagine some people thinking this is too broad, too big, but like Lee Pace is a huge dude, very intimidating. They use all of his size on display. He's just hulking over this guy, bitch slapping his advisors. There's a couple like he slaps stuff out of there, and then he goes and just slaps one of them across the face. Just and they can't, and you know, sending him scattering and killing this guy with his intimidation. But again, it goes back to cats and crowns. Like, how many different predictions can Harry Seldon make, seemingly contradictory, that are going to come true, and you just keep being like, it's nothing, it's nothing, we got this.
There's a line in a scene coming up with Brother Dawn and Day, or sorry, Day and Dusk, that really encapsulates my feelings about this scene and ties a lot of what we've already seen from previous episodes in. So I think this scene is really good in that regard, but it's also just an element that we don't see much in this show, which is comedy. I thought this scene was both terrifying because I wouldn't want to be that dude getting shouted at by a god emperor, but also it's kind of hilarious in how broad and over the top it is, and then the outcome of it is absolutely hilarious. And Lee is like hamming it up a little bit, like he's going
Broadway. Yeah,
he's got this like Negan style from the Walking Dead, this Negan style performance where his bobbing up and down is like leaning back a little bit, right? And like shouting into the sky. I don't know. There's an element of what he does,
like his knee comes, his knee he stamps the ground. His knee like involuntarily, like as he's winding up, and he like throws his arms wide and he stamps his foot. It is very broad, but I think it works because he is, as you said, this kind of like mythical god, emperor, infallible figure, and no one, like from his birth, no one has raised a hand against him or an opinion, and he is this kind of like Godzilla guy stomping through these people. Like I said, I see some people think this is too broad, but I thought it was very entertaining. It's exactly what you want from this scene.
All right, then we go to Brother Dawn looking at a dragonfly that is probably, and we'll find out by the end of the episode, a robot that he constructed. Dusk boards his ship, but finds Day waiting for him. And Day tells Dusk, you're going to have to stay on Trantor because essentially he doesn't trust his judgment after everything he's seen, right? The meeting with the statisticians, and Day is going to take his place on the mission, which is another thing that we need to talk about. So first of all, I want to talk about the line where he says the results of the mathematicians are remarkably self-reinforcing. And this harkens back, I think, to the first episode where he's cutting up the turkey and or whatever bird that was. And he says essentially
the peacock.
Sure, the peacock. And he points out how if your servants are too afraid to do their jobs correctly, you guarantee they will do them wrong. Right. And that is exactly, in my opinion, what has happened with the mathematicians. They cannot bring any answer back to former Brother Day, now Brother Dusk, that is not Harry Seldon is full of shit. And if they were to bring that answer back, they'd be killed. And so you've essentially self-reinforced the idea that Harry Seldon is wrong.
I think is exactly what's happening here.
Yeah, it's a nice connection between the episodes. And then you get to Day taking Dusk's place on this mission, which we get to see a little bit of the hierarchy in this episode, in this particular scene with the emperors themselves. We've kind of got the impression that Day sort of takes the lead, but there is a lot of, let's say, I mean, there is structure to it, but it's like a self-imposed kind of, unwritten rules sort of structure. And Day seems to be breaking with those very impulsively, which I think Demerzel points out. It really gets a good dig in because
really
Day is
good.
going off about how Dusk has been so impulsive and rash, and
Yeah.
he's rending the entire empire apart.
Yeah.
And then she at the end says, well, I'm glad that, there's certainly, after he says, I'm going on this mission, breaking with tradition, I'm glad that there will be, this puts an end to rending the empire with brash actions.
And
Impulse.
This is where so much of the narrative patience pays off in the first episodes, because we saw that Brother Dusk pulls rank on Brother Day from the previous generation and says, look, this is not your responsibility. I forget exactly. Like, he wanted to go visit Taskar. He's like, this isn't your responsibility. And he's like, but it is my right.
Yeah.
To us, like, I have the ability, like, you might have the final say, but I can go and put my eyes on it and give my advice and like whereas this Brother Day just fucking treats him like a naughty school child that stayed up too late for bed. Like, get your shit, pack it up, and get back to your bed chambers, and you clean up your mess that you made here before you. Like, this is a radically different way that the Day is interfacing with the Dusk.
Yeah.
And
it feels like that sort of thrashing of the empire tearing itself apart from within.
Yep. This is not a finely tuned vessel with any kind of pressures
No.
imbalanced. Yeah,
for sure. Dusk sends a team to investigate the comms outage near Terminus and to remind the Foundation that they need to return to their regularly scheduled dispatches. Is this going to be a friendly dispatch, a friendly reminder, or is this going to be something worse?
I don't know. It just depends, because they set this up too. Like, if the Foundation is seen as viewing the Anacreons, they could be under a official Imperial censure. But on the other hand, the Empire could ride in and save the day. Like, we're here minding our business, doing our Foundation stuff under Imperial decree, and the Anacreons came to go fucking hold us up. But on the other hand, you could also see how if the Foundation plays this right and gives them their damn navigation module, maybe they've got a friend out here that's on their borders. Because that's the thing, like the title Emperor, the barbarians at the gate, you think it's about Terminus, right? But Barbarians at the Gate was literally about ancient Rome being taken down by the the different Germanic and Gaelic peoples, the barbarians. And like I wonder if there isn't like, this is, you're supposed to understand that the Empire is a far more threat than Terminus, because the other thing is, like they said, that Harry Seldon predicted or assured them that they would get through the first crisis no matter what. So there's a little bit of pressure relieved them in this situation, or maybe it's pressure that's being applied to the Empire if you're paying attention, because I think that's what you're supposed to understand. Like, this isn't really a scary. This shouldn't be seen, if you have faith in the psychohistory, as a scary thing for Terminus, but it could be a scary thing for Trantor.
Yeah, for sure. Almost to the point where, the like I said, the thrashing of the Empire tearing itself apart, they could almost be the barbarians at their own gate in a way. It's like, your own actions are causing this in a lot of ways. I was specifically, when I asked about, this being a friendly reminder, talking about Terminus, because they're the ones who've been missing their dispatches. And there's a lot of anger in the room right now. There's both an imperial anger on that level, but there's also a personal anger, I think, in Brother Dusk at this very moment, because this is essentially the second half of the scene where he was told off by Brother Day. So he goes directly from that into telling his general to go out there and remind Terminus about their duties. I'm a little worried that there's going to be some Imperial anger inflicted or played out on the Terminus people, not just on the Anacreons.
You could almost say the same thing if you want to take another step back, that like what Brother Day said about the servants and the peacock also applies to the brothers. That like, if you make one of your brothers scared to do their job properly, then you're they're going to do it wrong. So like, is he going to try to prove himself right? And like, hey, not only is the Foundation not a threat to us, but look, they were going to fight the Anacreons for our behalf. Like, they're like true blue for the Empire. Like, what critical thing will he miss in this thing, or what will he do to kind of like flatter his own view? That could be a way they're going with it, because like, I think you can, Brother Day is seems to be dismissive and intimidating for both of his co-equals, supposed co-equals. And that can't be good.
Right? In an empire where the emperors are the empire, and they keep referring to them as that, that's a death blow. If the empire, being these three emperors, don't trust each other.
I agree. And it seems like it's something that's like, if you're not getting genetic drift, you're getting some kind of, I don't know what you would call it, some kind of nurture drift, that these guys are not like, the clones aren't staying true to the original metal that was Cleon. It doesn't seem like. And
we questioned Demerzel's role in that last episode, right?
Sure
is there any? I wonder if we'll see more of that coming up.
We definitely have some discussion and feedback about it.
Okay. Don watches Azura via his dragonfly and sees Obrecht lurking in the background. This is ominous. This is ominous to me. I don't think it's quite as ominous, though I think it is ominous to Don. He sees Obrecht back there. He gets a look of concern on his face, but then Obrecht just passes, and he thinks the danger is over. I don't quite agree. I expect her to show up like dead next episode, because in my mind she represents hope, and I think all hope for the Empire needs to be killed off.
You might be right.
This is not going to go well for her. I have a feeling.
You might be right, but also like I wonder. I got, when I saw this scene, that the Emperor Day or Dawn is getting into the scheming game. Like, he's got some information about this guy being sent on a covert mission by Elder Dusk, and that he, could start his own little kind of like, holding things over people's heads kind of empire. I don't know. That's what I didn't get, that he was like, oh God, I'm worried that this guy's going to kill my, I don't know, fucking commoner girlfriend.
Yeah, right. Right.
But you could be right. He was just excited about that.
Yeah, we'll see. Phase 3 of the interrogation on Terminus is apparently run by Farah, as she proceeds to tell Lewis that her people live on a dying world. They have the ships they needed to leave, but they don't know where to go, and that's why they're trying to get the slow ship's navigation module. And he doesn't put up a fight at all. He doesn't have the intuition that Salvor has, so she's leading this thing.
Yeah, way to go, Lewis. You got good cop and bad cop by the subject.
She is right that you can't play chess with someone who's willing to set the board on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a dangerous element, very combustible element in this whole equation.
Yeah. I still think that they're telling the plain truth. I do feel like, because also, what else? What else are they there for? What else are they there for? I feel like there's a
greater fulfillment. I feel like this is a Martin type thing where, yes, they are there for the navigation module, but they're also there for something larger, something.
Do you have any
ideas
could potentially
or kill them all?
That you couldn't just get book spoilers for? Like, I can't think of anything like what. Because Terminus is just a backwater. Like, they don't have their shit going. It's not like they have like, all their scientists and stuff have had time to come up with super advanced technology, or the Empire's collapse and they got the Encyclopedia Galactica and they're the only repository for tech. They build a little bit of those breadcrumbs when they have Farah say, we're technologically bankrupt now.
Yes.
They're not reduced to literal bows and arrows. That was symbolic of her position. They have guns and high-tech field artillery and all that kind of stuff, but like I wonder if they're going. I'm not annoyed. I'm just wondering where they're going with it.
Yeah, this stuff is not explicitly in the book. I think there's an element of like, Terminus does have something that no one else has, that was given them by the Emperor, right? This fence technology that we've talked about, and I think it's telling. I don't know, because I honestly don't know what happens going forward from here, because so much of this is not in the book, right? It's just glossed over. We're 80 years in the future, whatever.
100%.
So my question becomes, like, when she says, hey, she describes this fence technology as a weapon, and the weapon is only as good as the person who wields it, and it makes me wonder if it's not that they're after. Yes, they want the navigation module to get off their dying planet, but also they're looking for a weapon in order to kill them all, right? Like that's what Salvor says is actually what she wants. And we don't know if that's just personally what she wants or what they want as a species or whatever, or race.
Yeah, I guess if you decode and recode that so it kills the genetic dynasty, you could do a real whopper on the Emperor.
Right, we don't really know how it could be used in what ways, but that might be what they're actually after. I don't know.
Might be right.
So Salvor and Hugo see the Anacreons unloading machinery near the fence, and it's a flat cannon. But that doesn't make sense to Salvor. She's missing something about the bigger picture here. She tells Hugo that the vault has to be connected to Harry because her vision when she blacked out was in his library. The Anacreons then declare it time to raise their city and aim the flat cannon. Can I just say I've always loved the irony of the homophone that is raise? Because if you raise a city, you destroy it and crumble it to the ground, which is what they say they're going to do.
Especially if you're Amish, you can raise a barn and then raise the barn and then raise it again. It's just an endless cycle of raising.
I've always loved that. It just tickles me every time I hear the word raise in that context.
It is funny.
But yeah, that's the plan here. At the beginning of the end, as befitting its name, took place on Terminus, is what Gale says. Speaking of Gale, she's recovered then by the ship, which is kind of a final scene here.
What ship, though?
What
is that? We don't know anything. She's just floating in her coffin, deep in suspended animation, and she goes to some kind of, I don't know. Like, I thought maybe it's one of those jump gates we were talking about that she was just going to schlep back. But yeah, in transit.
I think it's a ship, yeah.
I thought is a little bit... I felt like it was a little bit self-conscious on the show's part to show this, like 6-second scene. Just like, hey, we haven't forgotten about Gale. It's like, I didn't think you did.
No.
I didn't need to see the 6 scenes, but like, I wonder what the thinking was behind that tease.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean,
it worked for me. That's why, okay, cool.
That's why ultimately I don't have any stakes as far as like Terminus, because I think they're right. Harry Seldon can predict all of what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Maybe like individuals will die that I care about, but like Terminus is going to be fine. I mean, the show's called Foundation, so I'm pretty sure it will be whatever it needs to be.
Sure.
But
yeah, that's it for the episode.
Yeah, I was what should we go right into feedback?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's get to feedback. Of course, the way you send us feedback is foundation@baldmove.com. Jim, guess what? Someone took us up on that offer, and it was none other than the showrunner, David S. Goyer. Now, I will say that, like, I don't have any way to independently verify that it's them, but, like...
The email address might check out. I don't know. I'm not going to like, give it away.
Check out. There's certain, but you know, like I don't think there's anything that they said that's provable that you couldn't get from the official feed. And we've been catfished. It's been a while. It's been 8 or 9 years, but we've been catfished a time or two before.
I'll say I'm excited with a healthy dose of skepticism, but that's my default state. So.
But yeah, he sent us an email. I'll read a little bit of it here. He says, crew member turned me on to your podcast. Of course, you know, David Goyer is the showrunner. He's the showrunner and creator of the Foundation TV series. The level of detail and discourse you guys explore is a lot of fun and really impressive. It's also nice to know the bulk of the metaphors we've been tossing out are landing. It said, as far as the end of your episode 3 podcast, one of your listeners mentioned a criticism regarding the lack of security surrounding the Star Bridge. While your defense is valiant, the criticism is valid. There should have been better security, or rather, there were better security measures in place. We're picking up on how those measures could have been circumvented, quote, ... eventually. So apparently, our listener was picking up a breadcrumb there that it should have been much harder, and part of the investigation is going to reveal. You know, I'm actually surprised to hear that, because I thought we essentially were told that there was too numerous leads and they'll never figure it out. And it's been 35 years. So like, I'm actually kind of gobsmacked that that's going to come back and be relevant.
Time jumps. A lot of time jumps.
And they also, he also says on the, as far as your discussion of water clock versus sundial. Yeah, fair enough. In our defense, the original version of the scene was longer and mentioned the issue of needing water for life. Sometimes for a whole variety of reasons, certain things are dropped into edit. Yeah,
Sure.
we did roast your water clock scene. Sorry. But I won't. I'm certainly not promising not to roast things in the future. So we invited David on at some point to talk about the podcast further. We'll see if he takes us up on that offer, if he can get it cleared, because they're doing the official podcast. Maybe Apple doesn't want him miking it up with other podcasters. And I don't want to step on Jason's toes either, for that matter.
Sure.
But yeah, if he wants to come in and talk more than just because I mean, official podcast seems like they got like a 30, 40, 45-minute limit. Clearly, this does not apply to us.
We could do 15 hours if he wants.
We have a very long forum, a platform to talk on. So that has tickled to death when I saw that pop up. That's first time a showrunner's crashed her feedback. So pretty cool. Doug L. I don't think this is the Doug L classic. This is not the lawyer Doug L. I think this is a new Doug L. Doug L the second. You might say
a clone of Doug L. It's brother Doug.
It's brother Doug. With regard, so it's brother Dougie, brother Doug, and brother Douglas.
Oh, Douglas
as they mature. Yeah,
I like it.
With regard to sequels, you're talking about the book sequels here. It says they're great. They're very worth reading. Have not read the prequels. However, they're very Dark Tower-like. Nearly all of Asimov's prior series feed back into Foundation. I heard that. A lot of his later works was just him building inroads back into his classic series. Anyway, Sewell says, okay, I've not read up on the books. In fact, I've not even heard that there's a Foundation series before I started watching this. So I will defer to the men of the science fictions. I suppose that's us. The first time through, I thought Ra's was a piece of shit. Just took upon himself to frame Gale with the murder of Harry and is in some sleeper cell with a terrorist group that took out the space elevator. That's not a terrible conclusion. Like it's. I think the show kind of wants you to think that.
It's still a possibility for sure.
It's true. It makes sense given that he seemed awfully bothered by something in the entire second episode. Yeah, like he's shit. Like it feels like his faith in Harry's been shook, and then it gets reinforced with Gale saying, "Oh, I don't know about the equations are not 100%. They're not fully fleshed out." Kind of. He seemed so upset when they watched the sundown, and she mentioned having a family with him on Terminus. The pieces lined up so well, but he could also be on my second time through seen as honoring some sort of deal with him. Harry's smart, but he's not always right. Yeah, that's the side I come down on. I think that Harry intentionally had him kill himself and then either I think frame Gale because the Empire mentioned in this episode that Harry Seldon's widely seen as being killed by his own protege. Could be Ra's, but I feel like the protege was always used in terms of Gale, right?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. That makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know. This didn't happen in the book, and I'm kind of in the dark about it. But it does feel like something that Harry might have put. But then again, this individual stuff kind of goes against psychohistory. But so does it count? Does the individual action count if it's essentially the individual action of like throwing a stone into the water to make a ripple? Like that's an individual stone, but the effect is the ripples, and it could be the one person can have an engineered effect. Like, for example, if you killed the head luminance, whatever they called her, Zephyr Opal or whatever. If someone assassinated her, it would sure enough have a ripple through 3 trillion people, even though that was an act of could be an act of a lone gun person.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff happening on Terminus right now is a result of the act of a single man, the Emperor, right? Deciding to blow their homeworld up. So yes,
exactly.
Yeah, there is some overlap in like individual actions and macro effects, but we need some way to easily like shorthand two sides of a theory, because like there is the theory that yes, this is all just a plain reading, and then there's the theory that like, well, no, this is actually part of a larger plan, and same thing's happening here with this episode, right? With the Anacreons. I feel like we should go with like a crowns and cats sort of coin. Like one side of the coin, the crown is the plain reading, right? The Emperor's just looking at what's happening and shitting his pants. Right. Doesn't know what to do. And then the real shit's happening over on the cat side, where they're cunning, they're smart, they know what's up.
It's mysterious. Why even this obscure cat on the official Imperial coinage? It's sneaky,
must mean something bigger. Yeah, so I come down the cat side with old Harry Seldon's death.
Speaking of cats, Sewell said, I'm always fascinated about a flora and fauna of planets. Can you guys go into what exactly is a bishop's claw if you don't think it's a spoiler or anything? Are bishop's claws in the book?
No, not that I know of.
Yeah, I think this is just a piece of world building. They just had to come up with a sick ass name for a ferocious, or not even that ferocious, it turns out, ferocious beast of the backwaters here. And they did it.
I will be surprised or disappointed, let's say, if there isn't a class of ship named a Bishop's Claw at some point in the series.
Yeah. There's gotta,
because it's a great name.
It is a great name, and I don't want to get into spoilers, so I need to shut this down. Let's move on to Daniel J. Jim mentioned the noticeable noise in ADR in episode 3. I noticed this in episode because I was watching this at an airport at least one time, and I had my Bluetooth earbuds in, and I could hear like pan to pan, like a little audible hiss versus it going away. And Daniel Spry got the likely explanation. In the official podcast, the showrunner said they were filming in some especially windy locations. One of the places' names actually translated to strong wind. Because of this, they had to re-record a lot of the dialogue for scenes set in those places. Love your discussion. Well, thank you, Daniel. I thought that was a hilarious conversation because, like, you always hear that, right? Like, George Lucas will be like, we went to the fjords of Iceland because we thought it would look like Hoth, and it turns out it's -80 below, and we almost all died. Like, we've been making movies for over 100 years. Is there not like a big book of Hollywood locations that says, hey, if you want to go get this place, you got to get it March through June because otherwise the winds are 80. Like Kevin Costner fucking sinks a Waterworld ship and David Goyer's like throwing away half his day. There's got to be like some kind of fucking Hitchhiker's Guide to movie locations. So when you need to go film Tatooine in Tunisia, and when you need to go film Hoth in Iceland, because otherwise, we can't be inventing we know where all the cool places on Earth are, right? We've got hundreds of years of weather records. Let's put them together is all I'm saying. Yeah,
location scouts need a database for this stuff at the very least.
Yeah, maybe we'd save $1 million or $2 million per episode if we had this kind of resource for filmmakers.
But I mean, I noticed it in places where the wind levels seem to be easily controlled, like inside of buildings. In the throne room, specifically, I noticed it last episode, but maybe there were some other issues as well.
A gentleman named Cathal drops a line, says, "Hey guys, it's the Irish Monk here. I'm enjoying the show and your coverage." Well, thank you, Cathal. Mm-hmm. One aspect of the show which bugs me, though it's only episode 4, is the dichotomy in character development between Trantor and Terminus. This is something we've talked about. Jim reiterated this episode. At first, I thought it's just my preference for intrigue storylines over action-y sequences, or maybe it's the setting. You got luxurious golds, oranges, materials, wood, glass in one setting versus barren, cold, volcanic, and makeshift camps at the other. I think it's a lot of it. Aesthetics is important.
Sure.
Or maybe it's just a distance or disconnection between the worlds that was jarring. But I realized that all these factors were also present in The Expanse, a show I adore. The stories on Earth and Mars versus the Belt and Beyond. Don't want to spoil things here, but could it be that the Foundation's writer room is split into 2 units, like the shooting units at various locations? For your information, Sheldon's library was shot at the University of Went here in Dublin, Ireland. So they talked about this in this, I think it was the second episode, how this is like just a globe spanning affair. I think they shot in 5 different countries. They get these alien looks the way they wanted to. He says it's hard to put a finger on why there is such a shift in feel between story settings. Maybe it's deliberate. Maybe we're meant to feel cold and distant when we join the characters in Terminus. I think that's there too, because Goyer did talk about like getting, there's kind of like a closed off, hunched in, like arms crossed, like everything's small and shivery quality you get from the stuff in Terminus because these actors are cold. It's very cold and windy where they're shooting, like it would be. But it might be more to do with the shared emotional beats of the characters despite being only 4 episodes in. I still love the show and I'm interested in your thoughts.
I think this would be a great question to ask Mr. Goyer if he were to come on the show.
I do think there's a lot to it that like the time jumps just made it very hard to interleave these stories together. So they felt isolated. And I think a substantial part of the middle of this season is probably going to be showing how these are very much connected. And there might even be like a passing of the baton of importance. So we're like, you know, as the Empire gets more and more stagnaty and fragmenty, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the Empire, Harry Seldon's right. The Empire is not long for the world. Psychohistory is accurate. That you might feel like a shift especially as Terminus kind of takes off and becomes, you know, more established, more powerful. You might feel that that allegiance to storyline shifting.
There's a definite difference in the storytelling methods that they're using too in these two places, right? The intrigue and like the maneuvering and a lot more of the motifs and themes that they're going for happening on the Empire side. The Terminus side at this point has been a lot of mystery, like not knowing what's happening, questioning things, and those two storytelling styles both interest me, but one interests me more than the other, and it's the intrigue, it's the political maneuvering, it's connecting the dots thematically, all that stuff. So I'm appreciating that more. But yes, there is a big difference in the storytelling on these sides.
Okay. Brian has a crazy theory. It says, I'm writing a quick line as I'm writing this real quick as I'm in line to pick up the kids. It just occurred to me. I think the Galactic Empire lost the robot wars. I think the Klingons think they're clones, but they're actually robots. That's why they have no umbilical cords in their stomachs. It's behind their neck and out of sight even to them. The babies had a chip in their template. I think that's true. I don't know if we talked about this, but there's something on its forehead, a little black box. And you couldn't be down there to investigate more. Why not? If only to hide the truth of what's really going on from the Empire themselves. They have that force field around them so no one can see them bleed, like when Demerzel got hurt. Why she's so nervous for Brother Dawn to get out of the scar. Also, when they die, they get cremated, so there's no decaying remains. There's no, you know, obviously, what do you call that? An autopsy. But Cleon the First was never cremated, and so because he's the real deal, and also the ashes are a natural steel blue. I don't know disintegration ashes from unnatural blue steel ashes. You know, that's an unnatural process. Sure. The disintegration of matter. It's not burning.
Would be an unnatural process, and this is the only fly in your ointment here. Robots growing and changing their physical appearance over time. I think that's the one problem with this theory, is that they would certainly notice 9-year-old, 10-year-old Dawn growing into 19-year-old Dawn into 30-year-old Day, right? And there would have to be, you would have to say that Demerzel can age, or that she's created some technology that can age robots if you want to patch that over. It's a big ask.
There are actually 32,000 android bodies for Klingon, and they're each one day older, and they just kind of shift the consciousness every night through a 30-year cycle. That's how they do it. Yeah. See how conspiracy theories work? I just made another one. Disprove it. Checkmate.
I can't.
Checkmate, robot denier. I mean, I don't know, Brian, you might be reading too much into it, but like, that's part of the fun of shows like these, right? We'll see.
No, it's a neat idea. That's my only objection.
Long odds, lots of internet points involved if you're right. So hold on to those tickets. Finally, Andrew Clark says, I've been enjoying the Foundation and your podcast about it quite a bit. I've come to the series having read and loved all of Asimov's Robot, Empire, and Foundation stories. Nice. I know you've been spending a lot of time wondering if Demerzel might be up to something nefarious. Without going too much detail or to spoil anything, I'll just say that unless the TV series is completely changing their nature, she's literally incapable of doing anything to harm humanity. The well-being of humanity is such a priority for her that she'd actually cease functioning if she were to do anything that worked against it. So you don't really need to worry about that.
I should have understood this. I should have thought about this with Asimov's rules, his robotics. So like
rules. he's referring to the Asimov's rules of robotics. And yeah. I mean, I guess maybe we should if this becomes more relevant, quote chapter and verse. But it's all about like a robot cannot harm itself. And they're like in order of like least importance to most importance. A robot must obey all orders given to it by a human, and a robot cannot allow a human to take to suffer harm through action or an inaction on its part.
And that's the most important, right?
That's the most important. And then there's also, I think you're referring to here, Andrew, the Zeroth law, which is like late in the robot series after he's written a couple. These are something the robots infer about their nature, that like actually individual humans are important, but what's really important is the continuity of the human race. Like I might disobey an order from a madman that wants me to nuke a whole world because there's a trillion people are going to die, versus satisfying the, despotism of one person.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
the trolley
like,
problem is a very real problem for a robot without that, right?
But like, as a big fan of Asimov, I'm surprised you say like you don't really need to worry about that, because like I feel like a lot of Asimov's works were all about finding the daylight and the moral dilemmas for robots in following that. And also, just because Demerzel might understand that she's serving all of humanity does not mean that she would be loyal to the Empire now, would it? Mm-hmm. Like if she thinks that like deposing the Empire would, or maybe she believes in psychohistory and she thinks that we should. So like, that's the thing. Like you have the rules. The rules are created not to limit the storytelling possibilities. They were created to explore the contradictions in a strange kind of philosophical, meta ethical framework, artificial one. So like, I think that like, yeah, there's still a lot to worry about, quote unquote. And also, this is an adaptation, not the books. Like they could just, fuck the rules of robotics. Obviously.
Well, they've already changed things, right? The clone nature of the Emperor becomes this other layer on top of these rules of robotics that draws a whole host of questions from.
Maybe Demerzel no longer sees them as human because they got no souls.
Right, she does. She did get weepy eyed at that.
You can do what you want to them.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, so, and the other thing is, like, in this universe, in this version of the story, mankind fought a long and bitter war against the robots and destroyed them all. Now, if all the robots were following the rules of robotics, I don't understand how a war ever broke out.
Fair.
So in this universe, I think there is plenty to worry about. But yeah, I get it. The laws of robotics and all that. But thanks for the commentary. Appreciate everybody's feedback. Including Mr. Goyers. If you would like to send us some, please do so at foundation@baldmove.com. Promise we'll read it. Not sure if everything will make it to the air because like we are getting a lot of feedback, but we'll read as much as we have time for. And yeah, thanks a lot. It's foundation@baldmove.com. We will be back. Another exciting thing is we just got cleared to get this screeners for the rest of the season of Foundation. So we might actually be able to advance. I don't know if we'll be able to do it this week, but we might be able to advance the clock and get a little bit ahead so we can start releasing Foundation like the same date and time that it releases like some of the other podcasts we do that we get screeners for. So we're pretty excited about that. Since it comes out on Friday, it's always been like Monday feels like a long time to get a podcast out, but honestly, takes that much time to research and think about it and all that kind of get the watches we need. Now we got screeners, we might be able to hustle that up a little bit. So that should be good news. It's especially late this week because again, I got delayed on travel. So it's a whole day late. So apologize for that. One last time, foundation@baldmove.com. We'll be back for episode 5 sometime within a few days of being released. And then from season 6 or episode 6 on, hopefully we'll be getting them out Friday when the episode drops. So that'll be fun. Come back next week. We'll talk about more. I almost said The Expanse. We'll talk about more Foundation. Until then, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Jim.
See ya.